All right. Welcome back to the Outlet Podcast with Gabe and Eric. I'm Gabe.
And I'm Eric.
All right. We thought we'd start out briefly with talking about the coronavirus and what's happening now because it's getting pretty serious.
Yeah, it's getting pretty serious. And I mean, I don't know. It seemed like, we're just in the beginning stages now. It's already wreaking havoc. The stock market has lost all of the value that it's gained over the entire Trump presidency. Airlines are going in the shitter, cruise lines are going in the shitter. People are going to Costco like it's the apocalypse and just buying toilet paper.
Dude, oh my goodness.
Yeah, which I find, that's got to be one of the most ridiculous things about this outbreak is that people are just like, well, what am I going to do when I'm stuck in the house for a month? Well, I'm going to shit a lot. So I better
buy toilet paper.
buy and get a lot of toilet paper. Yeah. Yeah, but it's like if the shower's still on, you just hop in the shower, you rinse yourself off. You don't really need toilet paper.
It's pretty dirty. I don't know. But yeah, man, hand sanitizer, toilet paper.
All that stuff's gone. Yeah,
it's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone. You can't even find it on Amazon either.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Pretty crazy. So the NCAA shut down March Madness. That's one. Most schools, most colleges are not most. I don't know. A lot of colleges are closing down. My brother's college shut down.
My college shut down.
Yeah, man, it's getting pretty serious. A lot of our friends' colleges shut down too, and I don't know. There's not much to say that we haven't already said, right?
No, you want to? Okay, so the Democrats in the House recently introduced a bill to help combat the coronavirus, and in that bill, it guaranteed free testing. So right now, without insurance, it costs around $3,000 to get tested for the coronavirus, and in that bill, it would guarantee that basically the government would pay for that testing in order to encourage people to go get tested and self-quarantine, as well as guaranteed paid sick leave for anybody that suspected that they might have it, right? So that people wouldn't be incentivized to go into work. If your money's tight, you can't just skip a week of work. Financially, and also, you might get fired, right? Because your boss is like, no, you can't just skip a week of work. You get 3 sick days a week, a year or whatever. So the bill in the House would have, helped combat those things, and the Republicans vetoed it. They did not vote for it.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought the bill was proposed by Trump himself.
No, it was proposed by the Democrats in the House, and the justification given by Republicans is that, well, if we allow this bill to pass, it can give the perception that the Democrats are the party that help protect the middle class and, are people that fight for the middle class, and we can't have that, especially in an election year. So, it seems to me like they're putting their electoral gain over the lives and the health of the American people.
That is terrible. I don't know if that's true or not. It's probably true. But that's pretty bad.
That totally seems like something Republicans would do, right?
Well, I don't know. It seems like something Democrats would do too on the other side. If
try to pass a bill on, giving paid sick
know.
leave and paying for stuff.
Look, man, I don't know. I just don't like how politics is involved with the coronavirus at all. I just think it's stupid.
Yeah, it should be a united effort. We should come together as a country and decide upon the best responses and fulfill those responses. But the thing is, it's these people's jobs to get an edge over the other party. And, if this virus can aid them in doing that, they're going to take that opportunity, right?
I see that.
Because, in times of crisis like this, obviously it's bad, but there's a lot of opportunity,
Tons. To make money,
to advance your political agenda,
yeah.
I guess that's pretty much it.
Well, if you're a hand sanitizer company, you're making bank right now.
You're making a lot of money. Yeah.
If you're a toilet paper company, you're making bank.
Yeah.
So
if you're an airline, you're selling tickets for $20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My parents actually just had to cancel their trip to Hawaii because coronavirus. This stuff, it'll hurt the economy for a long time.
Yeah, but the thing is, is the best economic system really a system where the slightest shake or the slightest poke can send the whole system into a spiral, right? In order for it to continue to function smoothly, no extremities can be involved, I mean,
well,
it
the
seems
airline
like,
companies were actually prepared for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had been stockpiling money.
Yeah.
For a long time.
Yeah.
So they can just write it out.
Yeah. I mean, they can write it out, but the thing is,
millions of businesses are going to go out of business because of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like millions of businesses.
Yeah. And I don't know. To me, it seems like, capitalism. Yeah, it functions great when everything's fine.
I don't know
But
about millions of businesses. Maybe not just thousands. I don't know.
Thousands. But yeah, I mean, to me, it seems like, I don't know, an economic system that cannot withstand a pandemic, that cannot withstand a housing crisis, that can't withstand, I don't know, a dust bowl, needs to be really looked at and questioned and see, really, I think we should really take a hard look at, is this the best way for our economy to function? Because, going into the future, we know this is not going to be the last crisis that we face. In fact, it's just going to be more and more crises.
Sure, and this one isn't even fully developed either.
No, I mean, we haven't seen the full potential of the, coronavirus yet. And yeah, I mean, I think that, yeah, we should really, sit back, take a hard look at, is having an economy and an economic system that can crumble at the gust of a wind, is it really, the best for the American people?
Yeah, well, the obvious answer is no, right? That's the obvious answer.
Picked up what I was putting
I was
down.
trying to, I was listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. You want an economic structure that will be able to maintain itself for a long period of time.
Yeah.
Right? And that means through tragedies and through, wars, through pandemics, through a lot of things.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't seem sustainable, then there's things that need to be changed within that economy itself.
Yeah.
And where do the changes actually come from?
Yeah.
Government, right?
Yeah. I mean, they can come from the top ultimately, but I think that, going into the future, we should not rely on the oligarchs that rule this country to make changes, right? I think that, if we allow them to make all the changes that they want, they're inevitably going to make changes that benefit them and their class. So I think that, going into the future, we should really look at, the wide variety of options that the American people have. I mean, there are tons and tons of people that dedicate their lives to writing and thinking about a specific aspect of the economy, right? Professors, all over the country, right? Independent thinkers that just, do a lot of independent research and, come to their own conclusions. College students all over the country, that are really passionate about this sort of thing and, dedicate a lot of their time to finding alternatives to our current system. So I think that, instead of just relying on those at the top to find solutions to capitalism, right? Because inevitably they are going to maybe find some solutions, but ultimately hold on to their power and protect their class interests. I think that we should really, democratize that search for a new alternative, and look at the wide variety of options that are given to us by the American people.
Yeah,
and try to pick what is best out of those.
Definitely. Yeah, well, there's since Reagan, we've had this economic structure where the taxes don't fall on the upper class but the middle class. And that as a long-term solution is not feasible at all.
Yeah.
Because the burden that gets placed on the middle class will eventually be too high.
Yeah.
And the consumerism will drop as a result of it.
Yeah.
And as a long-term play, like I said, is not very sustainable. So the alternative is to tax the rich who have the ability to bear the burden of taxes more than the middle class because they have less of the ability to pay the taxes.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems like today it's been a continuation of this voodoo economics, and it's not sustainable at all.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that that's one of the biggest lies that's been perpetrated in American history, that, trickle down economics, voodoo economics, whatever you want to call it, works. Right, because oftentimes, giving a big tax cut to the rich may result in a small increase in economic growth, right? Because they get a lot more money to invest into companies, right? But over a long period of time, that money is just going to be used to strip the surplus value of the labor of the working class and funnel it to the owning class, right? And that's a cycle that that won't be broken unless there's a populist movement that puts a stop to it, right? And the longer that cycle continues, and the more money that the wealthy hoard, the worse the response is going to be, right? It's, so unless, we kind of take reasonable civil electoral steps right now through legislation, to me it seems like the inevitable result is going to be, direct steps, right? Where those that have been, had their wealth stolen from them by the upper class are simply going to get so fed up that they're going to take matters into their own hands, abandon the bipartisan system, and do whatever it takes to get that money back, get that money, that they've been making this entire time, right?
Yeah, I definitely see that.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely see that. So you had a hypothetical for me?
Oh yeah. So it's kind of it's related to charity, right? And what us in the affluent first world should do in relation to charity, right? So basically, and this is not my own hypothetical. As some philosopher that came up with it, I learned about it in philosophy class, right? But I think it'd be an interesting topic for us to discuss today.
Sure.
So if you're walking along, walking around town, you see a toddler who is lying face down in a puddle, and you see the toddler still alive, or not a puddle, a little pond or something, right? Pretty deep, but the toddler is drowning, right? But you still have the opportunity to go and save that toddler. But in doing so, you're gonna get your shoes wet, and they're nice leather shoes that won't be able to withstand walking in a pond. So essentially, you'll be able to save that toddler's life, but in the process, you'll ruin your nice shoes. Would you go and save that toddler?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the obvious answer is yes, right?
Yeah.
You'd be hard pressed to find people that'd be like, no, fuck that toddler, bro.
Got nice shoes on. What do you mean?
These are my nice shoes, right? But essentially, that is, a way of representing our position in the affluent first world with the people that are in the global south, right? I mean, to be able to no, it's not as direct, right? When you give your money in the affluent first world to save a person in the global south, it's through a variety of institutions and charities and organizations, and you don't have that direct relief of being able to pick a toddler up out of a pond, right? But ultimately, it is quite a similar situation, right? Because you donate, all right, $200, $150, that will be enough money to buy mosquito nets for a significant amount of people and prevent them from getting malaria, right? Which is a massive killer in the global south. Or, just providing malaria medicine or vaccines, or, providing food aid to the malnourished children of Yemen, right? All of that would be, very little burden off of our backs, right? But it could have a significantly, good impact on the people that are suffering across this world, right? But, in the affluent first world, we often don't make that decision, right? And I'm not just speaking about hypotheticals. Me myself, right? I go out and I spend $8 on a burrito, or $20 on a shirt, or take a nice trip, right? Go up to LA, that'll cost $50 in gas, right? I make plenty of decisions that are essentially me choosing my shoes over the toddler, right?
Just to I don't know if it's that direct.
Fulfill my personal enjoyment, increase my own happiness, while that amount of money could be used to drastically improve the quality of life and the happiness of someone else in a impoverished country, right?
Yeah, I definitely see that.
Yeah.
That's a complicated hypothetical because with your shoes getting ruined, it's like, what value do my shoes have over the value of a human life? No value.
Yeah.
Compared to a human life.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very direct. I can go into the pond and I can go pick up the toddler. My shoes will be ruined, but I'll save the toddler.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very direct. But when we're talking about, Africa, the poverty that they have there, South America,
yeah,
all these really bad places,
yeah,
us donating money will help. It will definitely help. But is it going to fix the problem? Is it going to save the toddler's life instantly? No. It's because we don't see that gratification.
Yeah.
Is that we don't see, I pick this toddler out, he lives.
Mm-hmm.
It's more, there's thousands and thousands of ways to address this issue,
Mm-hmm.
and me donating $20 to this one charity might improve the lives of one or two people.
Yeah.
But it's not going to solve the problem, and so we don't see that huge, I solve the crisis of food in Yemen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know if it's a good hypothetical, but I don't think it's going to convince people to not buy an $8 burrito or drive 50 miles, not 50, but spend $50 on gas going to LA.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. It's complicated.
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely complicated, right? And it's an oversimplification of the problem, right? And the situation at hand. But I don't know. When it comes to deaths from malaria, very little money can go an extremely long way, right? Because malaria is a relatively preventable disease, right? You can prevent it really cheaply with mosquito nets, right? And then you can prevent it a little bit more expensively with malaria vaccines, right? And then the last resort is just medicine to treat the symptoms of malaria. But it's something that millions of people suffer from every year, and it's quite easily preventable, right? And it's one of the leading causes of death, right? So, yeah, and I think you're right. I think that in order for this hypothetical to work and to convince affluent people in the first world to donate to charity, it requires a certain level of guilt on the part of the affluent person in the first world, is that they have to feel guilty about being affluent in the first place, which is something that I feel a lot. I mean, the only reason I have so much in my life is because of the family that I was born into, and I had no choice over that. And largely, I mean, I didn't work for my house. I didn't work for the things that are in my room. I didn't really work for my clothes. I've worked a job, but all that money's gone into my savings account, and the rest is thanks to my parents, right? And I really had no choice in that. And on the other side of the world, there's someone else who was born in the mountains of Yemen, lived outside of Sana'a, and their life is absolute shit because one, because of the Saudi invasion of Yemen, but largely because of the place they were born in. And they had no choice over that either, right? Yeah. So ultimately, there's a big gap between me and that person, and I feel some sort of responsibility to rectify that gap. But in order for this hypothetical to essentially guilt people into donating money to the third world, people need to feel that guilt in the first place.
People do donate.
Oh yeah, people do.
People do donate, but it seems like such a massive issue that my $20 that I may donate, a week or whatever, doesn't seem that significant.
Yeah.
It seems like it would need to be a global scale, effort to try and fix the problem of malaria.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not this gratification that you get for pulling the toddler out of the river.
Yeah.
Even though you're messing up your shoes.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean that's another component that is not as direct in the hypothetical in the real world, is that when you send money into the void, essentially you're not cohesive, you're not aware of the direct effects of that money, right? You don't see the life of a young person in Burkina Faso. You don't see their life drastically improve as a result of that $20, right? So I mean, I think that could be one thing that although charities do that, is that they put out propaganda about how good their charity is, and try to convince the donors that their money is going a long way.
Mm-hmm. And they do guilt their people into believing that they need to donate money.
Yeah.
Like those commercials where they have like a Ethiopian child where his stomach's really big, and then a lady comes on and says, "You could save a life."
Yeah.
That makes you feel guilty.
Yeah, definitely.
It makes you feel guilty.
Yeah. But I mean, let's look at the issue of utilitarianism in charities, right? I mean, if you are donating money to a charity, we can assume that you are doing so to improve the lives of others, right? Whether they be humans or animals or whatever. You're doing so. You're putting your own personal wealth aside in order to make others' lives better, right? That's the basic premise of charity,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I see, especially in America here, that people donate to charities that are, relatively not utilitarian, right? And I'll use the Girl Scouts as an example, right? When people buy Girl Scout cookies or donate to the Girl Scouts, in their mind they are, donating to a charity, and that in itself is a good thing, right? But to me, it seems like, I mean, sure, I'm not trying to trash the Girl Scouts here. I'm sure they do plenty of good things, and build leadership opportunities for young girls and teach them how to cooperate and work together in a team. Providing valuable life skills for the rest of their life, right? But ultimately, they're mostly suburban girls who, don't come from an extremely impoverished background, and it's it's improving their life, but not drastically, right? And donating $50 to the Girl Scouts is not having as good of an impact as donating to, I don't know, Doctors Without Borders, or UNESCO, or some other charity that tries to help those that are living the worst possible lives here on earth.
Yeah.
People
There's definitely a
living in-
hierarchy of charity.
Yeah.
Like, you should donate to these people because they are suffering the most.
Yeah, and that small amount of money can go the farthest in improving someone's life.
Yeah,
right?
that's the part 2 of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's a complicated topic.
Yeah.
Charities and helping the world.
Yeah. But I mean, do you think that as affluent Americans, we have a moral responsibility to donate a certain portion of our money to people that are impoverished, and could
Well, my first response would be, how much should we donate, and is it going to change my life in some way?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I have to donate, let's say $100,
Mm-hmm.
that $100 I could be, buying candy or paying for gas or whatever,
Yeah.
but I could be using that money for buying books
Mm-hmm.
and furthering my education.
Yeah.
Right? So it's, at what cost does it come from the American people?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's kind of like ruining your shoes,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not near as bad as a dying child, but
Yeah.
At what cost? I'm not saying this for myself, because I would most certainly mess up my leather shoes to save a toddler.
Yeah.
But some people wouldn't,
Mm-hmm.
and if it comes at a sacrifice of things that they want, then people aren't going to donate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, people are going to come up with plenty of excuses, right? Faced with that scenario, I need to take my kids to Disneyland. I got to give them a good childhood, right? Oh, well, I need to fly to Milwaukee. My sister's getting married, right? People have a myriad of excuses of why they deserve to spend their money the way they do, right? But I don't know. I do feel that we are, morally obligated to donate a certain portion of our money to help the lives of others, right? But
yeah, and the Catholic Church believes that too.
yeah, I
right.
mean,
So we're supposed to donate.
Plenty of religions do.
Definitely,
I mean,
yep.
One of the 5 pillars of Islam is zakat, right? Which is you donate 10% of all your money to impoverished people.
It's the same thing in the Catholic Church.
Yeah,
10% of your income should go to the church
Mm-hmm.
and to charities. Like,
Mhm.
that's what the Catholic Church is usually. When you donate money and you put the money in the basket,
Mm-hmm.
the money that you put in the basket is supposed to go to the poor.
yeah,
Some to the church, some to the Vatican,
Yeah.
to the papacy.
yeah,
But most of it's supposed to go to the poor,
yeah,
right? And so, I mean, yeah, we're donating. I donate to charity every week.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
I mean, theoretically,
Yeah,
right? Who
theoretically,
knows?
right.
Who knows where that money in the basket
Yeah.
really goes?
Yeah,
But
yeah. I mean, priests need salaries, and
true.
there's some nice churches around.
There are definitely some nice churches.
yeah,
That's for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
But ultimately, there's no perfect charity, right?
That's right.
If we could donate to
the fund,
Yeah,
which is just a collection of helping everyone in the world.
yeah, exactly, that'd be great. And no administrators.
Yep.
It's all run by AI, right?
Yeah.
Nobody sitting in an office making $50,000 a year off of money that's supposed to be going to people that are living in poverty.
I feel like that's that's a big problem.
What
People donating money to
administrative
charity.
costs of charity,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
People believing like some of my money that I'm donating is going to some guy who's running this charity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're taking the money.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's somehow, that's kind of what I feel. Like I told you about the big scandal with the charity in the from the Catholic Church in the United States. Did I tell you about that?
No.
So basically, there's the Catholic Conference of Bishops in the United States, and basically it's just a collection of all the bishops in the United States who come together and basically decide where to, allocate resources. Right.
Yep.
And they found the Catholic Conference of Bishops was supporting a charity called the ISN, Ignatian Solidarity ISC, Ignatian Solidarity Confinement, something like that. But they found that the Ignatian Solidarity Fund or whatever it was giving money to abortion clinics and giving money to contraceptives, which are strictly against the Catholic Church's teachings. And so, money that I was putting in the basket was helping fund abortion.
Yeah.
Which is just, it blows me away.
Yeah.
So like I feel like that's another problem with charity is like how much of my money is actually going to what they're telling me it's going to.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean there are certain regulations that, governments impose on charities, in order to be a, I don't know, it's 501c, nonprofit organization. You do need to donate a certain amount of money to the cause that you are, supposed to be funding. But there is a lot of gray area, right? And if you are registered in the Cayman Islands, you're not subject to that sort of regulation. So, I mean, I do think that there is a lot of, a surprising amount of fraud and corruption in the charity industry. But ultimately, I think that, once again, that's just another excuse
to not
donate to charity,
That's true.
Yeah. But I don't know. So I feel like we talked about charity enough.
Yeah, we
right?
got it.
Yeah,
we covered it.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know too much about charities.
No,
I know like
not really. I'm kind of talking out of my ass here.
Yeah, me too.
But you briefly mentioned contraceptives, right?
Yeah.
So we talked about abortion, talked about gay rights, talked about trans people. So what is the Catholic Church's stance on contraceptives?
They're bad?
They're bad.
Yeah, they're bad because
why?
Well, because they violate sex. Because sex is supposed to produce children. That's the reason why you have sex, is to produce children. And if you are taking the pleasure of the act while removing the goal of the act, then it's morally wrong. That's the reason.
Why is it morally wrong?
Well, because it's a violation of what God created. It's a violation of sex because God made the act of sex pleasing so that people would be this is the theory here.
Yeah.
God made the act pleasing so that people would want to have sex to produce more children. Right? That's the idea. And if you're using that pleasure while removing the goal of the action itself, then it's not good.
Okay.
It's basically it.
Yeah.
And I know that's kind of a simplified version of it, but
yeah. But I don't know. It to me it seems like, I don't know, sex, consensual sex is one of the best ways for people to get pleasure, and it has no negative, supposedly, without taking God into the equation, it has no negative effects at all. I mean, obviously, there are STDs and, you get heartbreak and, all that sort of stuff. But the act itself benefits the two people having it, right? Consensual sex. And no one else is harmed in the process. And I feel like that's a rarity in the human world, is, gaining a pleasure without harming others, I mean, even the, cheap consumer goods that we consume, it may seem like it's not harming anybody and it's, just benefiting all the parties involved, but there are always, negative externalities associated with, the production of the good. There's always, some pollution at some point in the supply line that will negatively harm somebody somewhere, right? Whether it be in this country or overseas, right? So I think that...
Well, let me bring up an example real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
So birth control is a widely used contraceptive. It's used all the time.
Yep.
And I know women who use birth control for getting rid of acne. They're not having sex, but they're just getting rid of acne.
You're right. And stop their period cramps. And,
Sorry, exactly, yeah. When you take birth control, it messes up your hormones. It makes you think you're pregnant. That's what birth control does. Is it makes you think you're pregnant so that you stop producing the things that make you pregnant, right? Well, they found in women who take birth control that they don't choose up the hierarchy. So women are the selectors in society. They select the men, right?
I think it goes the other way too, though, right?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Men don't select women?
Well, okay, that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Throughout the animal kingdom, you have one gender of the male and female who choose the other.
Yeah.
Right. One has to attract and one has to choose. Right. And so men have to attract women, and women are the ones that choose the men. Women choose men up and down a hierarchy.
Yeah.
So if you're better looking, you make enough money, you're a stable guy.
Yeah.
The women who select you will be of higher quality. Right. Well, they found in women who take birth control that their hormones didn't choose up the hierarchy, but chose down the hierarchy. And so they were selecting worse quality men. Right? What do I mean by worse quality men? People who weren't put together, people who weren't structured, who weren't stable.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm talking
losers, dirtbags.
Yeah. Losers, dirtbags, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
And so it messed up their mechanism for choosing good men. And so that in and of itself is a bad thing, right? And there's all sorts of medical effects that happen when a person takes birth control that are bad too. Yeah. But, that's just one small example. Like, again, I don't think premarital sex is good, mainly because you shouldn't have the act, first off, if you aren't prepared to have a child, because there's always that risk of having a child. And if you have a child when you are like 16, 17, 18, pretty much fucked. Like you are really bad.
Yeah.
You got to support that kid.
Yeah.
I mean, getting an abortion really messes up people psychologically too.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of problems with having premarital sex, and I just don't think it's a good thing. Like one predictor of poverty in America is having a child before the age of 18.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What do you think about that, Eric?
I mean, I think that I disagree with many of your premises. Specifically when it comes to, women being the selector, I think that it goes both ways. No, I mean, I think that, men choose women just as much as women choose men. Now, men's, range of women that they would have sex with is, generally a little bit broader than the range of, men that women would have sex with.
Let me say this. Like if you go to a bar.
Yeah.
Okay, the man buys the drinks for the women.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Why do they do that? Because they want to, they want to have sex with the woman. So they gotta prop themselves up. They gotta make themselves look good. They gotta say, oh, let me buy you a drink. I'm this guy. I'm really cool. I got a beard. I'm looking good. Whatever. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
So they have to make themselves attractive to the women.
Yeah.
And the women have to select the men.
Yeah, but doesn't it go the other way too?
Like what?
Like
you already said, like the range that men will have sex with is a lot larger than the range that women will have sex with.
Yeah.
So the women choose the men.
Right, but men also choose women.
In what way?
All right, group of girls getting ready to go out. What do? Well, they maybe put on some makeup. They do their hair real nice. We're speaking in a lot of gender stereotypes here, and a lot of those are socially constructed. I just want to give that disclaimer,
we already discussed that.
Yeah, I mean, they, maybe wear some high heels, put on a nice dress, make sure that all, they all look good.
Well, why are they doing that?
In order to attract the best men, have the best men select them.
Yeah, well, they want to make sure that they can have the ability to choose good-looking men.
Right, and wouldn't it be the same on the guy's side? Why are you dressing real nice and getting a good job and presenting yourself?
Because they have to attract the right women.
Well, so you have the ability to have the best women allow
Well, let me say this.
I feel like it goes both ways, right?
So
there are differences between the genders,
yeah.
but ultimately people dress up nice and try to attract a mate.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's 100% that women select the men, but I'm just saying mostly that women select men.
Yeah.
Right? Like, let's say a man goes out and goes to a bar and meets this girl and says, hey, do you want to have sex? like let's go to the back, like let's fucking go to my place, right?
Yeah.
Well, the majority of women, right, if that was like the first thing that you said to the person is like, hey, let's go have sex, like the majority of women would be like, I don't really know you and I don't think you're that cool and let's not do this. But if a woman went up to a man like, hey, let's go, the man would be like, all right, let's go.
Let's go. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so
I
the
do see what you're
women,
saying.
you see what I mean? Like the men can't choose women just willy-nilly, but women can choose men willy-nilly and they'll say
yeah. Well, I think that's just a result of guys being horny as shit,
Okay,
not
but
giving a shit about who they fuck,
I don't know if that's just a result of it, Eric.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like, you get my point. Women select men. Where I'm going with all this? Contraceptives are bad.
Yeah.
I
mean, okay, yeah. So birth control, might have some negative effects, but ultimately, a person is going to be let's have this as a premise, right? Someone's going to have premarital sex, right? And no matter how much the Catholic Church beats them over the brow with that, or tries to propagandize it, premarital sex is bad, right?
All right,
it's gonna happen.
Propaganda.
Right? It's gonna happen, right? Can we set that as a premise, right?
Premarital sex is gonna happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially in today's society.
If Gentiles are having premarital sex,
so it's gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
And there is a chance of people getting pregnant, right? And so premarital sex is gonna happen. We can use that as a premise, right? We can try to discourage it. We can try to show them that premarital sex is a sin and it's against God's will, right? But ultimately, we're gonna take that as a premise, right? We can't stop that at this juncture, right? However,
we can't stop it totally.
We can't stop it totally, right? But let's take that out of the question right now, right? We can have that discussion, right? Whether it's, worth trying to stop and, what are the most effective ways to stop premarital sex. But as of now, the premise is it's going to happen, right? So people are having premarital sex, right? They're not ready to have children, it's a one night stand. You've known this person for 2 days, right? You've seen them 3 times, right? And you have sex. Do those people, deserve essentially the burden of having a child together, right?
Do they deserve that burden? Are you trying to segue this into abortion?
No. But I'm saying, all right, so people are having premarital sex, right?
Okay.
And we can both agree people that don't know each other having children is a bad thing.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
So what are the ways to prevent that, right? You can't stop premarital sex in this hypothetical, right? You can, technically, right? But it's going to happen, right? In this hypothetical. What are the ways to stop it?
Well, I don't, well, that would be, well, contraceptives would be the obvious answer, but contraceptives isn't the right answer because if we agree that, well, I don't know if we agree or not, but to say that because it's going to happen and it's bad, we should let it happen. That's not a very valid argument.
Right.
Right. So if we agree that premarital sex is bad, not premarital sex is bad. If we agree that having a kid with a person you don't know is bad, then we should protect against it through educating them not to have a kid or even entertain the possibility of having a kid. So, like condoms have like a 88% effective rate.
It's like 99%, bro.
99? Well, I don't know.
And then you add that to birth control, you got
100%.
99.99999.
Yeah, but there's still that possibility of having it.
Right.
Having a child.
Right.
Or, condom failure or whatever.
Right. There's also a possibility of, people getting hit by meteors.
Sure. Or the woman just forgets to take the pill one week. Like, seriously, like, there's too much risk involved.
Yeah.
Like, and of course, if you haven't if the woman hasn't said she's been pregnant yet, then okay, whatever. Who cares? I'll just keep having sex. But, like, I just don't see it as a very good solution. And sex is a pretty sacred, not sacred, but it's a pretty, it's like a really big step with getting to know a person.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, that's like where meeting women goes to. Like meeting and developing a relationship with a woman and, loving that woman. The act that expresses that love with the woman is sex. And it's a pretty big deal. And I just don't think it's very good for people just be kind of abusing that act all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Why not though? I mean, what's like? I don't see what's fundamentally wrong with just, just fucking. Like just one night. You both have some fun. No one else is hurt in the process. I mean, obviously I understand that you think it's a sacred act, and by treating it so, kind of willy-nilly, you're disgracing God, right?
That's not my point.
Yeah,
that's not my point. My point is simply this: it's like having sex with another person's a big deal, right? Like it's a pretty big deal.
It's a big deal if you make it a big deal.
Well, well, it's just inherently a big deal.
Yeah, I think so, but I don't know. I don't value it too highly. I think that.
Look, here's let me just give
by putting sex up on the top of the pyramid of a relationship, you're ignoring all of the other great things that come with a relationship. Intimacy and getting to know another person and their vulnerabilities.
No,
and,
that's great. That's
sharing your secrets. To me, that's really the best thing out of a relationship is getting to know that person wholly and allowing them to know you wholly. Right?
Definitely. But the reason why you do all that stuff is for having the pinnacle of that relationship, which is knowing that person physically, and that happens through having sex.
Yeah. I mean, I see that. It's a part of it, but also, I don't know. I just think people should be able to fuck. Let them fuck, bro.
No, I get that. I get that perception. I don't think I'm convincing anyone not to have sex.
You know what? I think I'm gonna stop having.
Yeah, you remember? I remember when Gabe said that on the podcast sometime.
Yeah, but
look,
I don't know. Look, so
let me just give you a summary of my position.
No, let's talk about it a little more. So what effective steps do you think that institutions can take to prevent people from stop them from having premarital sex?
Well, the real answer is there's nothing institutions can really do to stop people from having sex.
Yeah. The
only thing that could potentially happen is educating the people of the risks involved and educating people of what's going to happen with the relationship between two people if this happens. Like having sex with another person is a very it's a big step in a relationship, and if you do it too soon, it can be potentially ruining to the relationship. Like there's a lot of if there's a person I like a lot, and I think she's a great woman, and it's the third date. And I just get real horny. I'm like, let's fuck, let's do this.
Yeah.
And she's, and she wants to do it too. And then we have sex. I mean, it's going to change the structure of the relationship. Like, I feel like that's one reason why having sex premaritally is not great is because until you guys are completely committed to each other, sex is just abusing is saying that I can do this without having a full commitment to this other person. And that women want to know that they have a commitment with another person, that I'm committed to you and you're committed to me, and we'll help each other out through our problems, through our good times and our bad and all this. But if you just jump straight to sex, it's like, well, okay, our relationship is built off of pleasure now. You're pleasing me and I'm pleasing you. Yeah. And that's that. It's not we're both mutually completely interested in each other and want to know everything about each other, and there's actually this love between us. It's no, you help me. It's very utilitarian. Right. It's like you give me something I like and I'll give you something you like. And that's our relationship. And that's not a good basis for a long-standing relationship. Just having sex all the time. See what I'm trying to say?
I understand your point.
That's really just my summary. Is like unless you're completely committed to that person through life, marriage, right? Which is you're taking vows that's saying I'm going to be with you, through all your bad times and good times, and I'll be there for you, right? Without having those vows and saying, I'm committed, you shouldn't have sex because first off, it has the potentiality to produce a baby, and if you guys have a baby, that's going to mess up your lives a lot through economic reasons, right? Like it costs a lot to have a fucking kid,
diapers are fucking expensive,
super expensive, and it's a big burden too to have a child, raise it for 18 years, like it's tough. And two, it's having premarital sex isn't good because you guys don't know each other. You guys aren't committed to each other. And I feel like sex is something that you need to do once you're committed to another person. Or it should be after you've been completely committed to a person.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, it seems like it's a pretty reasonable position.
I don't know, man. Like, I feel like it's not a good pitch to the people today. You know
It's
what
not.
I mean?
It's not.
Like,
It's not.
you know.
But if it's true, it's true. You know?
I don't think it's true, bro. Like, you know, like, I don't know. I feel like, you know, you're putting sex up on this pedestal, and yeah, sex is great. It's awesome. But, you know, by, you know, not having premarital sex, you know, you kind of build it up to be, you know, the end goal, right? And, you know, you can only get it once you're fully committed, and, you know, you have to be married and all that sort of stuff. You know, it kind of puts it up on this pedestal, and, you know, allows it to kind of supersede other goals that one might have in life, right? And you know, by withholding sex from yourself and not pursuing it the way you want to pursue it, because of a religious background, you know, it can sort of tend to dominate, you know, by you know, withholding it because of ideological reasons. You know, it can supersede other goals that you have in life, right? As opposed to, you know, treating it, you know, what it is. Sex is great, but it's just sex, you know. It's just two people fucking, you know. It's not.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I feel like just trying to. And look, again, I'm not going to convince anyone.
Yeah.
Like,
no, but this is all about, you know.
This is just theory.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not really theory. I mean, it's either true or it's not true. That's really the point. And even if it is true, then it needs to be implemented. Like, having premarital sex is potentially life-changing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, seriously life-changing.
Yeah.
And not having premarital sex is not life-changing.
Yeah.
Like, just purely based off of risks and rewards, right? I don't think it's a very good thing to do. Like, and here's the thing: I've had premarital sex.
Yeah.
Right? So I feel like I'm kind of, you know, defending a position that I'm not following.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a problem that can be addressed in many ways, but it's not going to be implemented fully. Yeah. Like, no one's going to stop having premarital sex from listening to what I'm saying. Yeah. No one's really going to stop having premarital sex from just the Catholic Church's teaching. Yeah. So, you know, it's kind of a hopeless position at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not convincing anyone. I don't even know what I'm talking about. Yeah. I'm not convincing anyone.
Yeah.
I'm just.
All right. So I'll pose another question to you.
Okay.
Kind of in the same vein of, you know, Catholicism and religion, but more historically based. So I've heard this phrase, and it doesn't really make sense to me, that the Jews killed Jesus. Can you explain that to me? And
the Jews killed Jesus. Well, the Jews did kill Jesus.
Well, why? How?
So, do you know the story of Pontius Pilate and the Jews and Jesus?
Hit me.
Okay, so basically,
I mean, I went to church growing up, so I got a brief, you know, teaching, but hit me with the official Catholic position.
Yeah. Okay. So, Jesus was a teacher, right? And he was teaching the Jews, not Jews. Well, yeah, they were Jews. Teaching people in Jerusalem and Nazareth and places where he went. Yeah. He was teaching them.
Palestine.
Yep, that area.
Yeah.
He's giving them the law, and what he proclaimed is that repent and believe in my teachings, and you shall be saved. Yeah. Right. Well, in the Jewish religion, you can't wipe away sins only through long fasting and you know, real works. You can't wipe away sins. You got to visit the temple. You got to pray. You got to do all this stuff. And Jesus came and said, what you need to be doing is asking me for forgiveness, because I'm God, and I'll forgive you of your sins. Right? Well, that's heresy, according to the Jewish tradition. And so they saw him as a heretic, and potentially dangerous too, because he was getting a large group of people to follow him and believe in him. Yeah. And so the Jews saw him as a threat to their power, because they ran the country from the Jewish religion, right? It was very theocratic. And so what they did to Jesus was they tricked him, and there were many times, like for instance, when there was a person who had committed adultery, right? It was a law that Moses had established that anyone who commits, I think it was Moses, might be another prophet, but if a person commits adultery, stone them, right? Stone them. And so they took this adulteress to Jesus and said, what should we do with her? According to the law of, I think it was Moses. I don't know if it was Moses or not, but yeah, according to the law, we should stone
one of those old guys. Yeah.
One of those old guys, yeah. According to the law, we should stone her. And then Jesus said, let the one without sin cast the first stone. And all of them left because they were all sinful.
Yeah.
And so he was teaching a different religion, and they saw that as threatening.
Yeah.
And so they killed him.
Yeah.
And why do people say the Jews killed Jesus? Is because it was the Jewish people who were threatened by Christianity killed Jesus. That's why.
Okay.
Pretty good summary.
Yeah. Well, so to me, there's a couple of premises that I kind of have question with, right? So I mean, when Jesus was born and lived in Palestine, it wasn't an independent Jewish state like under David. It was the Roman Empire.
That's right. Yep.
And ultimately some of those people in power in that province of the Roman Empire might have been Jewish, but to me ultimately it wasn't the Jews as a whole that were threatened by Jesus's teachings. It was the Roman Empire's power. And
sorry to interrupt, but that's where we get to a person called Pontius Pilate.
Yeah.
Pontius Pilate was the governor of the area that where they killed Jesus, and the Jews didn't have the power to kill Jesus. They didn't have the power, so they had to go to the Roman Empire.
Yeah,
and there's a long passage in the Bible where it talks about how the Jews went to Pontius Pilate in a big crowd, and Pontius Pilate questioned Jesus, and Jesus gave him replies. He said, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Right, because that's what he was claiming. I'm the king of the Jews, and he said, "You say that I am the king of the Jews," which basically means you got it. I am the king of the Jews. And so Pontius Pilate comes out and in speaking to the large crowd, he says, "I find no guilt in this man. And what should I do with him?" And the Jews shout, "Crucify him, crucify him," right? And so Pontius Pilate, seeing that a riot was about to break, he said, "I wipe my hands with this man. Do what you want with him." Right? And so the Jews took him and crucified him. So the Roman Empire was in power, but it was ultimately the Jewish people who killed Jesus.
Okay. Well, so
they said, "Let his blood be upon us and our children."
Okay.
That's what the Jews in the crowd said.
Yeah. So let's think critically about this, right? So after Jesus died, right? Christianity and Christian martyrs spread throughout the Roman Empire, right? And for several centuries, the institutions of the Roman Empire resisted them, and they murdered martyrs in stadiums, and they made them fight lions, and they persecuted Christianity, right? However, once Justinian converted and became a Christian, Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire. Right, and there were several hundred years where Christianity was the state religion of the Roman Empire. So, do you think that in that process, the Roman Empire and those people that ruled the Roman Empire had an incentive to wash their hands of the blood of Jesus and, blame it on a scapegoat, right?
The Jews?
Yeah. Because to me it seems like it's from your interpretation and the interpretation given by the church, it clearly points a blaring finger at quote the Jews as a whole, right?
We don't to this day hate Jewish people.
I think that the actions of Europe speak against that.
What do you mean?
That Jewish people have been persecuted,
but not in the name of Christianity.
I mean, who was doing the persecution?
Are you talking about the Germans?
I'm talking about basically every single European society after the fall of the Roman Empire.
Persecuting the Jews.
Yeah, it's happened time and time and time again.
Well, okay, so
the Iberians, the Russians, the Polish, the Germans, the French, the English, the Swedes.
Well, Jesus Christ specifically taught to love your enemies.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know of real evidence that it's Christians who are specifically persecuting Jews, but even if that was the case, then that wouldn't be following the Christian law, which is love your enemies.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I don't want to say it was... I don't think it's right to say that. I don't know of any evidence where it was specifically Christian peoples coming together to scapegoat and hurt Jewish people.
Right. But I mean,
like the Germans, for instance, in World War II, they were driven by Christianity to murder Jews. They were driven by Nietzsche and his doctrine of the Übermensch.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. To me,
which is a completely secular doctrine.
Yeah. But throughout the history of Europe, after the fall of the Roman Empire, we can assume as a premise that essentially everybody was a Christian, right? After the Reconquista and the Muslims were pushed out of Iberia, essentially Europe was a Christian area, right? Everybody was a Christian except for Jews, right? So I think that if somebody that's not Jewish is persecuting the Jewish people, then they are inherently Christian, right? Because there's no other religions in Europe, right? So if you're not Jewish or you're not Christian, you essentially don't exist, right? Those are the two options for
well,
people.
I don't know.
I mean, there are pagans, right?
Yeah,
They're heathens, right? But the Christian missionaries essentially eradicated that strain of religion in the Dark Ages, right? All across Europe. And essentially all of the large institutions, all of the kings, all of the dukes, all of the countries in Europe were Christian and were relatively theocratic. And so in that persecution of the Jews, I think it's,
Well, I don't know of any evidence that they were actually persecuting the Jews in the Middle Ages.
Yeah. Well, so
like what? Like
Castile, right, which later became Spain
yeah.
after a royal marriage with Aragon and the Iberian, the Iberian Peninsula was, united under the Castilian crown. During the Spanish Inquisition, they violently drove out all of the Muslims and all of the Jews, and they seized all of the wealth from those.
Well, there weren't
groups.
many Jews in Spain. It was a majority of Muslims that came from
Albany.
Albany? No, not Albany.
From Morocco.
Yeah, Morocco.
And the Maghreb.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. It was mainly Muslims, right? It wasn't Jews.
Right, but Jewish people have been a minority in many European nations all across the board, right?
Yeah.
In the Reconquista, now it was mostly Muslims that were facing persecution and violence. However, there was a significant Jewish minority in Iberia at the time, and they all fled to the Ottoman Empire. Actually, they fled mostly to Constantinople or Istanbul at the time, and other big cities in the Ottoman Empire. And that's a pretty well documented historical occurrence, right? And in Russia too. Russia, wasn't Catholic; it was Orthodox Christianity. But there have been pogroms against Jewish people throughout Russian history, right? That whenever there's some civil strife in Russia, there's some sort of unrest, Jews would be pointed out as the scapegoat, and the powers that be would simply divert the hate and the anger against them to the Jewish people, right? And they would go and raid Jewish parts of town. They would go and destroy and burn down Jewish villages and take their wealth and violently
the Russian Orthodox would,
right? And it happened in France and England too, Catholic countries at the time, right? Again, it's the same pattern of there's some sort of civil strife, right? The people as a whole are upset at those in power, and those in power instead point a finger at the Jews, and then they simply express that violence and that hate and that anger against this oppressed minority, and they go in and they burn villages and they kill people and they take their wealth, right?
Yeah.
So there's an established pattern of using Jews as a scapegoat and expressing the anger against a large institution.
Well, that's been around,
Jews, right? And I mean that's why it was.
That's been around. That's not just specific to Christianity. That's specific to like every peoples ever.
Right.
Every people have hated Jews. I don't know if that's I don't know if that's completely valid, but it's near them. It's near.
Right. I mean, I think under the Ottoman Empire, it was a relatively secular state. I mean, sure, the Ottoman Sultan claimed to be the Caliph, but there was a tolerance for all religious groups within the Ottoman Empire. You know, whether that be Coptic Christians in Armenia, or Jews in Palestine, or Orthodox Christians in the Balkans.
Yeah,
there was a tolerance for religions in the Ottoman Empire, and you know, pretty much all religious groups flourished. Now they financially incentivized conversion to Islam. Essentially, if you converted to Islam, you would pay less taxes, and if you proved that you prayed 5 times a day to Mecca, you would get financial benefits, and you know, potentially move up in the hierarchy of society. However, it was just the carrot. There was no stick attached to being you know, of some other religion in the Ottoman Empire. Right? But okay, no. Let me wrap it up, right?
Okay.
So, and of course, the most famous example of Jewish persecution in Europe is Nazi Germany and the Holocaust, right?
Definitely.
But the reason why that was able to be used, and the hate against Jewish people was able to be expressed so violently, is because of a long-standing tradition of using Jewish people as a scapegoat for all of a society's problems, which is why, you know, I mean, if the Nazis were the first people ever in Europe to use the Jews as a scapegoat, it would have been harder to use that as a scapegoat, and it would have been harder to you know, persecute those people and engage in the Holocaust. However, in Europe, there was a long-standing tradition of persecuting Jews, using them as a scapegoat, and stealing their wealth, and burning villages, killing families, you know, smashing Jewish businesses, and yeah, I think that the reason it was able to be done so, you know, relatively easily, right, to convince an entire society to murder a minority, was because of that long-standing tradition of.
That's a pretty big leap. That's a pretty big leap. Yeah. Well, it seems like you're attributing the Nazi Germany's hate for Jews to Christianity.
I mean, I'm not necessarily blaming it on Christianity in itself, but I think that the Christian narrative that the Jews killed Jesus, look at them. They said, you know, let the blood be on our hands and all of our children after. That seems like a not the right quote, right? But yeah. That seems like a perfect, you know, alley-oop for somebody to just dunk the basket of persecuting Jewish people.
Here's what I'm getting at. I don't really believe that the evidence that you brought up is truly valid. That Catholics inherently persecute Jews because they killed Jesus. I don't think that's a motivation for hating Jews, right? Because Jesus was resurrected. It's a comedy. Jesus' death on the cross, Catholics believe, was necessary for salvation.
Yeah.
So, in a way, the Jews helped Christianity. It isn't that we hate Jews today because they killed Jesus. Most Christians now, you know, if you went up to them and said, hey, you hate Jews because Jesus died at the hands of Jewish people, they'll say no.
Yeah.
And I think in the Middle Ages, it was the same way too. That we didn't, in the Middle Ages, they didn't inherently hate Jewish people because they killed Jesus. That wasn't the motivation. And also, Jesus' main doctrine was treat others the way that you want to be treated.
Yeah.
And Christianity in the Middle Ages tried to do that as best they could. At least that's what I've read, right? So I don't know that the evidence that you brought up is valid at all. But to your point about the Nazi Germany, them using them as a scapegoat, the motivation behind that wasn't Christianity at all. It was entirely secular. It was entirely secular.
Yeah.
There was no religious intent for persecuting Jews.
Yeah.
It was purely based off of a secular doctrine presented by Friedrich Nietzsche. Well, I shouldn't say purely. It was also influenced by other people.
Right.
But the majority of it was we are a superior race and that we need to persecute inferior races. That was the main teaching.
Right, but the lines...
Man is but a bridge to the Übermenschen.
Yeah, the lines...
the best way to make the Übermenschen is by killing off the weak.
Yeah.
So it's a big leap to say that Christianity in the Middle Ages influenced Nazi Germany's doctrine.
Okay, but I mean, were the lines not drawn religiously? I mean, the lines between, you know, the Übermensch and the superior race and those that were inferior, right? It was drawn along religious lines.
No, it was drawn off of evolutionary lines.
No, but I mean, the groups that were persecuted, homosexuals, the Roma, disabled people, but mainly Jewish people, right?
What was the first part of that?
That the lines that the Nazi regime drew were religious lines. The basis for the persecution of Jewish people were that they were Jewish.
Yeah,
right?
which is why,
which is a religion.
Right. Which is,
right.
But it's also because Friedrich Nietzsche taught that religion is not killing people, but holding back progress. Right? So that's why they were persecuting Jews is because they were believing in God. And he saw believing in God as holding back people from reaching this state.
Right.
State being the Übermensch.
Yeah. But would they, if their ultimate goal then was to persecute religion and those that believed in God, did they persecute Christians as well?
Oh yeah. There's a story of a person named Maximilian Kolbe, Father Maximilian Kolbe. He's a saint now. Yeah, he was put in concentration camp because they do that to Catholics as well, and they killed him.
Yeah.
They didn't kill him directly. There's a story. He's called the martyr. He is a martyr, is because there was a person who escaped from a concentration camp. And when a person escapes from a concentration camp, they kill 10 people. So it's basically this, they guilt people into not trying to escape.
Yeah.
So they chose 10 people at random, and one of the persons that got selected at random was a father of kids, had a wife and family. And Father Maximilian Kolbe said, I'll take his place. And so we see him as a martyr because he sacrificed his life for the life of another person.
Yeah.
And he died.
Yeah.
It's actually a really remarkable story if someone wants to read it, because they put him in a starvation bunker and he survived for 3 weeks.
Wow.
And he wasn't showing any signs of dying.
Yeah.
And so they finally injected him with poison and he died. So look, to say that that Catholic peoples weren't persecuted under Nazi Germany is wrong.
Yeah.
And also to say that the Nazi Germany was influenced somehow by Christianity is also wrong. They were influenced purely off of secular reasons.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying necessarily that Christianity was the root cause of the Holocaust, but I think that the narrative pushed by the church, right, that Jews killed Jesus, right, and, there was this crowd of Jews outside of Pontius Pilate's house, that were screaming to kill Jesus, right, that narrative feeds in to the anti-Semitism of Europe in the Middle Ages up until modernity.
Well, I don't see that as true, because the people that joined Jesus were Jews.
Yeah.
The first, for example, Paul the Apostle was a Jew who persecuted Christians, and he became a Christian, right, because he saw the Catholic Church's teaching as true, right? And to say that after the Jews killed Jesus, that there was some anti-Semitism towards them may be true, but I don't really see any evidence that it is true. I see a lot of evidence that the Catholic Church tried to teach Jews about Jesus Christ and convince Jewish people to be Christians instead of Jews. They weren't going out and killing the Jews.
They did.
Well, they weren't going. What do you mean they weren't going out? They were killing Jews.
The Spanish Inquisition.
Well, okay, fair enough, but that was 1,400 years later.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know.
And again, even if they were persecuting the Jews, which I'm not saying they were, but it's possible that they were.
Yeah.
You know what? I'd even say it did happen.
Yeah.
Because there's, who knows? It probably happened.
Yeah.
To say that they're following Catholic doctrine is wrong. To say that they're doing the right thing is wrong.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not.
But
saying
they're not.
Following Catholic doctrine.
But I think we're making we're equivocating Catholics who practice Catholicism falsely and wrong to Catholics who practice Catholicism true, right? And I think we're putting those two together as Catholics, although they're not both Catholics. One is not Catholic and one is Catholic, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah,
I feel like we're
definitely
equivocating terms.
Yeah.
But
definitely.
I don't know. I feel like this is... I don't know. I feel like this is just kind of a dispute over history at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, all right. So I'll pose another question to you. A little bit more theoretical this time, less historical. What role do you think religion plays in a society? We've kind of touched on this before, right? And so what role does religion play in a society? And do you think that a strong religion is necessary for a functioning society.
Yes, I do. Yeah, to your first point, what role has religion played in society?
Or also, what role will it play?
Yeah, in the future.
In the future, yeah.
Because it seems like it's dying at this point.
Yeah.
Like it seems like it's really losing its
grip.
Yeah. Well, the role of religion in society is really to give people a moral and ethical background. To say, these are the fundamental truths of life, that you need to follow these certain rules in order to have a functioning society. And it's done a great job at that. It's really given people the idea that treat others the way that you'd want to be treated. And that's a very fundamental and necessary aspect of any functioning society, is to treat others the way you want to be treated. And so that can't be understated. Also when there's some moral problem that arises, it gives a background that's founded off of a supposed God. Well, not supposed, but God.
Yeah.
Right? That all life is sacred, for instance, with abortion. That we should abolish abortion because it's unethical. Right?
Yeah.
And so the role of religion in society is to guide people away in a way that will get them to heaven. That's the real way. That's the real goal. To structure a society that is good and will get you into heaven. Right? So that's very base level.
Yeah.
But yeah. Order a society in a way that is going to get you to heaven.
Yeah. Yeah, but do you think that in order to do that, it an institution, whether it be religious or secular, needs to impose these absolute truths that are inherent in religion, but not necessarily in a secular institution. Because to me it feels like an inherent part of religion is that this is the way it is. You can't question that. I mean, you could, but that's not the way a good religious person acts, right? And that these truths are self-evident and you must abide by them. Do you kind of pick up what I'm putting down?
No, I really don't get what you mean. What do you mean?
Do you think that function of providing a moral compass, provide the ethical backing for society to function, do you think that a necessary part of that function is the absolute nature of religion, right? That do you? I don't know. I'm kind of finding it's hard to articulate my point, but yeah. Do you think that providing that moral backing and that ethical guidance requires the absolute nature of religion, or could it be done in a more or in a less absolute way? That these are the moral rules that we should follow. However, they're not absolute. They are up for questioning, and if someone questions them, effectively enough, then we can revise them and improve them.
Yeah, well, I think what you're saying is that there are doctrines that are in place in we'll just say the Catholic Church, because that's what I know.
Yeah.
There are doctrines that are in place in the Catholic Church that don't seem to be that don't seem to address certain issues in the modern world. Like there's certain truths that are put in the Catholic Church, not put, but are
put forth by.
Okay,
yeah,
that's better. In the Catholic Church that don't address modern issues. Like there's no "thou shalt not commit abortion."
Yeah.
It's funded, not funded, but it comes from the idea that thou should not kill. But abortion's a modern interpretation of killing, right? And how do we place this Catholic moral in the modern world? Well, things change. Doctrines cannot change, but they're set up in a way to help guide people in the modern world.
Yeah.
Right? Like I said with abortion, thou shalt not kill.
Yeah.
We see that as killing, therefore you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Right? So there's I'm kind of talking in circles here, but when you have a set of rules that are established by God, then we can use those. We can use that as a template to determine our modern implications of whatever may come up.
Yeah.
Right. So are they deterrents from? Well, let me just bring up the opposite end of the spectrum. Let's say that a society is founded off of no religion and that they abolish a religion. What happens to that society? Well, we can look at history. It's played out itself a few times.
Yeah.
Right? Like Nazi Germany, for instance, wasn't religious. It had a nature of religiosity, but it wasn't founded on any preset religion.
Yeah.
And two, I think the best example is the USSR, which outright abolished religion.
Yeah.
And millions of people died as a result of that. So when I
also bring up pretty much all of Europe now. Sweden, Norway, Denmark, the Netherlands, Finland, Germany.
Yeah. Okay, but
all of those are relatively secular.
Sure, they're
countries.
living off the residue of religion.
Right.
They have been somewhat instilled religious ideas, right? Like the idea to not to treat others the way you want to be treated.
Right.
That's a religious idea that's stuck around there.
Right.
So they still have a religiosity without the church, you could say.
Right. So they've held on to, the core moral doctrines of Christianity. However, by interpreting those, or by putting those doctrines in a secular light, they are able to, interpret them in order to, they're able to work on them, and they're able to, improve them essentially, without the overbearing absolutism of this is what God says, you can't question it, right?
Well, there's still Catholic. There's definitely still Catholics in Europe, but it's on the out.
Yeah,
it's going out.
I mean, I think something like 95%. I'll just use Sweden as an example because that's what I know. 95% of Swedes don't believe in God, right? It's an extremely atheistic country, and I mean, people still go to church and people still do religious traditions, but it's more like, it's a cultural institution.
Yeah, it's like a formality.
You go to church on Christmas because that's what you do, right? You light candles, you have fun, you see your friends and family, right?
Yeah.
But it's not because you believe it's Jesus' birthday and it's your responsibility as a Christian to do that, right?
Yeah. But going back to the other examples where religion was completely outlawed, and if a person was religious, then it was seen as against the state, right? What happened to those societies? Well, they didn't have a cornerstone to base their society off of, and when they lost that idea that we should treat others the way we should be treated, then it was instantly murderous.
Yeah.
So I think all functioning societies have had some idea that the individual is somewhat divine and that needs to be respected. Everyone's individual nature.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you see what I'm trying to say? Like there's this fundamental idea. Well, so we could take America. Why do we think that all people should have the right to vote?
Because of the Enlightenment thinkers, essentially.
Yeah, but that's because we believe that all people. Yeah, well, that's because we believe all people have something to bring to a society and that all people should be respected. Where does that idea come from?
I think
that idea is strictly a Catholic teaching, that everyone has something to bring to the table. Treat others the way you want to be treated.
Yeah.
Don't just say, oh, well, you don't get the right to vote because you're stupid, you're dumb, you're a Jew.
Yeah.
We gotta. The Catholic Church is bringing forth this sort of unity within a people, within peoples, that we should treat everyone as though they are valuable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And you don't get that from secular societies.
Yeah.
Because in a secular society, you believe that, all people aren't intrinsically valuable. That it's this.
I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think that you can still have that belief, right? Treat others the way you want to be treated. Everybody has individual values, but you don't need the backing up of God to do that. You don't necessarily need, well, this is what God said, so it's true. You can simply use, logic and reason and the Socratic method to come to that conclusion and perpetrate it as a moral doctrine within your society.
You can use reason to come to that teaching, but the teaching has already been established by the Catholic Church. So what you're doing is you're somewhat of a plagiarist by saying, as a person who reasons his way to the idea that people should be valued, because that doctrine has already been presented by the Catholic Church.
It's not just the Catholic Church, by the way. That's
religion as a whole,
yeah,
but I'm just using what I know. What I know.
And also back to your point about America. America was largely founded on Christian principles, not just Catholic ones. Mostly Protestant. If you look at the area where our nation was founded.
Well, Protestants come from Catholics.
Right. But I mean, up until the 1960s, the principle that everybody is valuable, wasn't implemented at all in government. We have systematically persecuted women and ethnic minorities, and the Native Americans that lived here before, throughout our history, right? All while claiming to be doing so on Christian principles,
Yeah, and that was improper.
Right. So I don't know. I feel like, yeah, I mean, America might have been founded on Christian principles, but those Christian principles are still not into effect until today.
Well, we have a Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
That we add things to our Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
Those rights are to protect the individual.
Yeah.
Right. And so to say that America was improper in treating its people as all peoples as valuable is correct. Did a shitty job.
Yeah.
Up until the 1920s, women didn't have the right to vote.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not. And
I mean, still today, felons can't vote, and felons are disproportionately black and brown men who are over convicted and over persecuted for crimes that are committed, pretty much at the same level as
yeah,
white
and
people.
I don't think there's been a perfect society where every individual has been valued equally, right? And I don't know that there will be a society where all individuals are treated as valuable. Right?
Yeah. Let me see. So, but.
So the role of religion.
Yeah.
Back onto our main point.
Yeah.
The role of religion in society is to give a foundation to what the society should be structured ethically, right?
Yeah.
That all people should be valued,
yeah,
right? Which is a religious doctrine that we should treat others the way we want to be treated, right? That's another doctrine, and the list goes on,
yeah,
right? And when you have that background, then it sets up a society in a way where it can live harmoniously,
yeah,
and will be ultimately good.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah, no, and I understand your point. But to me, it seems like societies that have a Christian or Catholic background can move away from the absolutism of religion and God, and uphold those moral doctrines, uphold the golden rule, and treating individuals as individuals and how they want to be treated. And move past the absolutism of religion, and continue to engage in logic and reason, and refine those doctrines, and come up with new ones that address new problems, continuously, right? Because the thing about having doctrines that are set in stone is that as a society changes, those doctrines do not change, right? And
well, they do change.
But you said before doctrine can't change, right?
Well, doctrine can't change, but the implications of the doctrine can change.
Okay. Yeah, but they do so more effectively in a secular society, where people debate it, and they use logic and reason to come up with alternatives.
Well, reason isn't opposed to religion. It isn't opposed to religion.
Right, but if there are certain truths, right, which is inherent in religion, that there are truths that's the way it is, it's set in stone, it becomes much harder to reason and reach the truth, because there are certain things that you can't question and you can't poke holes in, and those are automatic premises in any argument, right?
Yeah.
So it creates a much narrower path for argumentation and reason.
I think what we're really getting at is, what is the relationship between facts and values? That's what we're getting to. And this is a topic that's been debated for centuries.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And my position on what's the relationship between facts and values is that values are something. Values teach you how you should live,
Mm-hmm.
and facts tell you what is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And again, this is super complicated stuff, and it's really stretching me to even talk about this.
But
But
me too, man. It's hard to articulate all
this
these
is
points.
like this is a topic that's super hard to talk about.
Yeah.
But values teach you how you should act, and facts teach you how you should be,
Mm-hmm.
how you should exist.
Mm-hmm.
When you have too much facts, everything is facts, then you don't know how to live.
Mm.
When you read a great book,
Mm-hmm.
a great fiction story, it tells you it teaches you some part of life that you can apply in your own life. When you read a book on science,
Mm-hmm.
it explains the physical world.
Yeah.
And it seems like now facts are being dominated.
Mm-hmm.
Facts are dominating,
Mm-hmm.
and values are somewhat being forgotten. And when values are forgotten, then people don't know how they should act. All they know is what is.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't have what is because you need to know how to implement what is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So having values, we could call that religion, and we could call the other science, which is the facts, have to work harmoniously in a way that creates something that is good.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you can take the facts and you can take your values and you can use your values and facts to work together to create, let's say, a functioning society,
Mm-hmm.
then that is desirable. But if you have too much facts and you don't know how to implement those facts because you have no values,
Mm-hmm.
then you lose the usefulness of the value of the facts.
Yeah.
If you have too much values and no facts, then everything is simply there's no understanding the world, the objective world.
Right.
Do you get that relationship?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's what we're really touching on is
Yeah.
the relationship between the facts and values.
Yeah. Well, to me, it seems like you are, coming up with the premise that values are inherently religious, and without religion, there are no values, right? But to me, that has been, I've seen plenty of societies, China, Sweden, England, that are relatively secular, right? Their religion exists in those societies, but people's values are mostly determined by the society that they live in, and
well,
by
where did that
observing,
society that they live in get their values from?
I mean, ultimately, it might come from religion.
Yeah,
right?
well, Confucianism in China,
Yeah.
right? Like you mentioned on a later podcast, to understand China, you have to understand Confucianism.
Definitely. But Confucianism, although it doesn't have a religious aspect, it's more of a political and social doctrine. Confucianism doesn't claim that these laws are right because God said so or because some God said so. They claim to be right because look at the historical pattern and look at how things have functioned in China over.
Yeah, but we
its
could
history.
say that Confucianism teaches you how you should be.
Yeah,
Right.
Definitely.
So that would be a value.
definitely. And but kind of my point here is that I think that a majority of people's values are ultimately derived from the society that they live in, not necessarily a book or a temple or a church. It comes from observing others and seeing how others react to those actions. Religion doesn't really say anything about being a racist on Twitter, right? But living in America, you kind of learn not to be racist on Twitter because of others' reactions to that. You see that most people will speak out and object to that, and as a result, you learn, okay, I can't act that way, right?
Yeah, well, where do the people that are somewhat ostracizing you for being racist on Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
where did they learn that value of saying that we shouldn't be racist towards other people?
I think it ultimately comes from American history and being educated about the real life consequences of racism, right? slavery, lynchings, persecution. And once you're educated about that, you learn that those are the implications of racism. Therefore, it's our moral duty to do everything in our power to curtail it, right?
Yeah, and I would say that the American history was that America was founded off of Protestant values.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we are living off of the values that have been instilled in us, that we should treat others the way that we want to be treated.
Right.
So those are the values. I think that when you have any society, the values come from a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And that teacher, whether it be the Buddha or Confucius or Christianity,
mm-hmm.
Jesus,
or Muhammad,
yeah, all those teachers, though they created a list of values
mm-hmm.
that you should value.
Yeah.
And those have been passed down from generations to generations.
Yeah.
And I think almost all societies, I'm reading a book right now called The History of Religious Ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Comes from this guy named Marquet Eliada.
Mm-hmm.
What he teaches in his book is that every society has had religion.
Mm-hmm.
Every society.
Mm-hmm.
From the hunter-gatherers, Neolithics,
mm-hmm.
all the way up to today.
Yeah.
And it's been fundamental to that society's religion.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still today.
Yeah.
Maybe it's less than it was, 10,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? But we are living off of religious values that have been refined, fine-tuned,
mm-hmm.
and made as good as possible.
Right.
Those values we have today come from religion.
Yeah. But so if a society can exist off of, the fumes or the residue off of religion, right? And those values can still be instilled and upheld without the, concrete institution of a concrete religion, right? The Catholic Church or, Buddhist monasteries, right? If those, ideals and those morals can still be upheld and acted upon without, a concrete institution, why do we need that concrete institution in the first place, right?
Because if you abolish the institution, you abolish the values.
Not necessarily abolish, right? That's authoritarian. It have to come from the top and ban and burn all the churches, right? But if a society and a populace as a whole chooses that, listen, we see the value in some of these morals brought to us by this religion, however, we don't believe in it fully, right? And we don't want to uphold some of the other values that we choose that are not fitting with our personal moral compass. Why is that? Why is that concrete institution necessary? Because to me it seems like a society can continue to uphold quasi-religious values and quasi-religious morals mm-hmm. without that the overbearing absolute institution of a concrete institution.
Well, if the Pope becomes a guy who just wears a funny hat,
mm-hmm.
then
which I think he is, by the way.
If the Pope just becomes a guy who wears a funny hat, then the religion itself loses its weight.
Mm.
It loses its value,
mm-hmm.
and it won't be respected.
Mm.
Which is again what happened in the communist Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Is they said to hell with religion.
Yeah.
All it's been doing is it's been holding back our progress.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be looking at the facts, and we need to abolish all our values.
Mm.
Because if we only look at the facts, then we'll become a better society.
Yeah.
That was the idea.
Yeah.
But what ended up happening is when they abolished the values,
mm-hmm.
then the lives of its people were made less valuable,
mm-hmm.
and so it became instantly murderous.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what Friedrich Nietzsche talked in his book, Thus Spake Zarathustra,
mm-hmm.
is he saw that in the process of abolishing religion,
mm-hmm.
millions and millions of people are going to die.
Mm-hmm.
He saw that.
Yeah.
And he was exactly right. He was exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
When you take away the cornerstone,
mm-hmm.
we could say that cornerstone that holds the building together is
mm-hmm.
this values, whether or not it's being given directly from the for example the Pope,
mm-hmm.
right? That it's a very rigid doctrine, whether or not it's that or some sort of loose interpretation of the doctrine.
Mm-hmm.
If you wipe away the loose interpretation or the authoritarian way of practicing the doctrine,
mm-hmm.
both lead to the same place.
Yeah.
Which is death.
Yeah.
Right? Because you don't have this foundation of truths that people inherently accept.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'll give you an example. So, when I was a young kid, I was on a playground, and this little kid, was acting like a jerk. So I took his arms, and I put them behind like this little pole, and I was pulling them. And I remember this very, very vividly because my teacher came over. It's like, Gabe, what the hell are you doing? Put me in timeout for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I remember crying, sitting next to the playground, all sad.
Yeah.
And that was teaching me that, hey, you can't just pull another person's arms. That was hurting him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like, that's a bad thing to do.
Yeah.
Well, if there's no foundation that says we shouldn't hurt other people, right, and we should treat others the way we want to be treated, then my teacher wouldn't have said stop pulling his arms.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because what's that founded off of? It's founded off of nothing.
Yeah.
Right? And so that idea that I shouldn't pull that little kid's arms and hurt him was an idea that came from religion, or it came from a teacher.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That taught us values.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So those values that are still in a society, while they are pretty much the residue of, an authoritarian Catholic Church, we could say, or authoritarian, whatever.
Yeah.
That still governs our society. And I believe it's the best way to govern a society based off of evidence that when it was abolished, it was instantly murderous.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm not advocating for the abolishment of values, right? But I think that, upholding one religion as the one absolute true religion is kind of inherently, I don't know, not logical, right? And obviously, you think it is, right? But I think that, like you said earlier, we can read the teachings of teachers, right? And we can read books about science and fiction, and they give us one perspective on the world that we live in, right? And in order to gain a more coherent perspective, we need to consume as many different perspectives as possible, right? And by upholding one religion as the one true religion, it automatically curtails the perspectives and the teachings of all other religions, right? So I think that obviously there is value in Christianity, right? The Bible teaches some good moral foundations, right? But by saying that the Bible is the one true book and that's the only book you can read, right? When it comes to religion and founding your morals, it only you're putting one perspective over all of the others, right?
So, okay. So I think what you're saying that's kind of implicit in your argument is that other perspectives should be valued equally to some perspectives.
Not necessarily equally. I mean that's up to the individual to determine. Right?
I would say it's up to I'd say it's up to divine to whatever is divine.
Right. But can we admit that there is value in Buddhism, right? That meditating and putting aside the pleasures of the world allows you to step away from the suffering of the world, because the world is full of suffering, right? That is what life is in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
right?
I want to stay away from the heresy of pluralism, which is this idea that all religions are pretty much the same.
I mean, I'm not saying that they're the same, right?
But they have value to them.
All of them have value.
I would say they have value.
All of them have value, and by a institution above a society, right? The institution that rules a society, by putting forth one interpretation of one religion above all others, automatically curtails all the other teachings of all the other wise people in the world, which is illogical, and it doesn't benefit the society because it puts a certain moral, line, essentially, a certain moral teaching above all others, and there's value in all those other moral teachings. So by you can still have the residue of one particular religion while still allowing the people in that society to look towards other religions to complement that specific moral teaching.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, so we could say that the value of Nazi Germany's teachings was less valuable than, we'll say, the Catholic Church's teachings.
Yeah, we can agree on that premise.
Yeah. So there are certain values that shouldn't be valued, Okay, so if one teaching seems to be true in a majority of the aspects that it teaches, then other teachings are imperfectly representing that value, imperfectly teaching imperfectly teaching whatever the doctrine of that perfect moral. And look, I'm getting really incoherent right now.
No, me too, man. We're deep into this podcast.
Yeah, we're deep into this podcast, and we're talking about like probably the hardest thing to talk about the last last little hoorah. But okay, so there are some values that shouldn't be valued because they're not good.
Right.
And you would say it's up to the individual to determine the correct values, but individuals aren't correct all the time. They're fallible. Right? So if there was a divine or a person who claimed to be God, then that would mean that his values, the values that he teaches, are true because he claims to be all-knowing and all-powerful.
Right.
Which is why we believe in Christianity.
Right.
Or well, not we, but I believe in Christianity. Is because the person who taught the doctrine claimed to be God.
Right.
Claimed to be without any fallibility. All other religions don't have that person who is made flesh to teach us our values, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why I believe Christianity's values over any other religion's values.
Right.
Is because the person who taught us values claimed to be infallible.
Right. So did Joseph Smith, by the way.
Well, okay.
So I think that the ego of the initial prophet doesn't necessarily play that much of a role,
but it does
in
because
the teaching of the religion in itself.
Yep. But it does because Joseph Smith wasn't resurrected. So if we believe in a actual physical showing of his divinity.
Yeah, but I mean that comes from the teachings of that religion, right? Whereas the outside source, the third party verification of the resurrection,
the Gospels.
That's a Christian doctrine, right? That's part of Christianity, right?
But at its time, it was a third party source.
What do you mean? I mean,
okay, so Jesus Christ would be the first-hand account,
right?
Okay, and the third party account would be the people who are watching this,
right?
Okay, and the people who are watching this were the people who wrote the Gospels, so we could say that those were third-hand accounts. And also, there were 4 of them, and all 4 of them claim to see the actual. Sorry for moving the mic stand. All 4 of them claim to see the exact same thing.
Right.
So that is we could call that a peer-reviewed study. You know?
But I mean, so all of the apostles, John, Luke, and Paul, and all those guys, right? They had an inherent incentive to back up the teachings of Jesus Christ because they believed in the teachings of Jesus Christ, and they wanted to spread those teachings as far and as wide as possible, right? They inherently have an incentive to back up the resurrection story and to prove the divinity of Jesus because they want to spread that doctrine and that religion as far and wide as possible. Now,
I don't think that was their motivation.
What?
I think their motivation was just writing down what they saw.
For what purpose?
Their purpose was to educate. That was their purpose.
To spread the doctrine. To spread
the
teachings of Jesus.
But I think what you're putting in, I think you're putting intent on these people by saying that their intent was to spread Christianity, right? And it wasn't just to write down what they saw, but to spread this teaching.
Yeah.
Okay, that was part of it, but I think their intent was to just write down what they saw, and what they saw was the resurrection.
Yeah.
Right. I think we're kind of straying away from our talk about the relationship between facts and values at this point. I think we're going into like Christianity as a whole.
Yeah. Okay, so back to facts and values. I don't know. To me, it seems like a lot of religions teach great things, right? And because of the different societal backgrounds of those prophets and the initial, teachers of each religion, they have different strengths, right? Christianity teaches a lot about, individualism and upholding that individual and being, not subservient, but worshiping God and dedicating your life to serving God, but it doesn't say a lot about, how an individual should act, politically or through charity, and that's because Jesus didn't hold any political power in his life, right? Jesus was just a carpenter and a teacher who, roamed around Palestine teaching, right? And
well, he was asked about politics.
Right, he was asked about it, but he didn't hold any political power himself.
No, he didn't.
He didn't rule an empire. He didn't rule a kingdom, right? And on the other side, Muhammad did, right? Muhammad not only was the prophet, but he was also a great conqueror. I mean, he took his forces of converts from Medina to Mecca and founded what would later be the Umayyad Empire, right? Which conquered all of Arabia and northern Africa, right? And in that process, because he was not only a prophet who advised spiritually, because he was also a political leader, a lot of his teachings were political, right? And based on how a society should function politically, right? And how an individual should act in that society, right? And because...
Well, the Catholic Church did the same thing.
Right, but it wasn't Jesus. The Catholic Church did that because there was a lack of that sort of teaching within Christian doctrine, and they felt the need to enforce and reinforce Christianity by filling in the gaps left by Jesus, right? And so those were gaps filled in by people that were, by your definition, not divine. They're just people, right? The bishops and the administrators and the politicians of the Roman Empire. They were not divine, and so those gaps were filled in by people that didn't speak on the behalf of God, right? As opposed to Muhammad, right? Who gave direct teachings on how a society should be structured and how an individual should act within that society.
Okay.
And I think that Zakat is a good example of that, right? That Muslims should donate 10% of their income to charity, right? And that's an inherent part of Islam, and it's Jesus might have said things about donating to charity, but there was never a hard number put forth by Jesus. You can just pause it, bro.
Yeah, I think we gotta. I think we'll talk about facts and values on another podcast.
Yeah, we
got. I think this is a
to.
good place to stop.
Yeah, we got some other things we need to do.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, thank you all for listening.
Yeah.
If you like what we talked about, we mostly talked about religion this time. Strayed away from American politics and all that stuff. But yeah, thank you for listening. If you liked what you hear, hit us with a like and subscribe. Give us a comment. Let us know what you thought. Yeah.
Please give us a comment, because we like to read those. And this isn't just a discussion between Eric and I.
Yeah.
This is a discussion with the community.
Yeah.
People who want to listen and hear what we got to say.
Give their input. Yeah.
So, all right. Thank you all for listening. This has been the Outlet Podcast with Gabe and Eric.
Yeah.
All right.